So welcome to the final of the color change livestream series. This is the Erdnase change, or the Houdini change. It is a very popular move, and over the course of our livestream or video, if you see it edited afterwards, I'll cover the history of the move, the mechanics of the move, what I didn't like about it, and how I tried to improve it. So you'll see each step of the development up until not up until now. I'll show you like a couple of the developments of this move. So I won't show you everything, but I'll show you how I first got the move rolling. So yeah. So like every magic move, the history of this move is sort of a mess. I mean, it is relatively simpler, but every magician has their own input on, no, this guy didn't create it, this guy created it. But this move is sort of the same, because this move is sort of very clustered in terms of history. I mean, there's two main sources that this move actually come from. So the first one is the Magician's Handbook by P.T. Selbit, that was published back in 1901. So that was published under the name of New Color Changes Fourth Method. So it's the exact same mechanics as the Erdnase change that you see nowadays. The only difference is this move is actually credited to Harry Houdini, and it was published 1 year before Erdnase. So yeah, I'll quote Mr. Selbit. So, quote, "For the knowledge of the move, I am indebted to my friend Mr. Harry Houdini," unquote. And that's how this move became known as the Houdini change. But what's funny is that Harry Houdini actually became mad at P.T. Selbit for publishing the move, because Harry Houdini didn't actually want P.T. Selbit to publish this move. So he was actually angry. So yeah. The other source of this move that, well, most people actually associate with this move is, well, the Expert at the Card Table, published by S.W. Erdnase, and back in 1902, so 1 year after P.T. Selbit's publication. So in this book, the Erdnase change is known as Transformations Two Hands First Method. So again, a very long name. Back then, people didn't have like abbreviated names; they just had like giant titles. But because this was published by Erdnase, this is how this move became known as the Erdnase change. Yeah, I just found it really interesting that people found this particular move and was like, yeah, this is the Erdnase change, because we normally shorten the move names for the poster boy moves, but I find the other transformations, so you might notice that it says Transformations Two Hands First Method. There are a couple of other methods in the book. I find those other transformations a bit more interesting than the Erdnase change, but again, so I'm kind of interested to see how this actually became the poster boy Erdnase change move. But yeah. So it's pretty clear from publication history that Houdini's publication, well, pre-existed Erdnase's, right? So clearly we should be calling this the Houdini change rather than the Erdnase change, right? But some magicians actually argue that the move existed before Harry Houdini, and they provide two pieces of evidence for it. Well, the first one is note P.T. Selbit's language. So he never outright stated that Harry Houdini created the move, only that he shared the move with him, right? So that's one piece of evidence, apparently. The second piece of evidence is that the moves were published a year apart. Now, it's highly likely that, Erdnase saw Harry Houdini's publication, was like, yeah, I'm a yoink that for my own book, because a huge part of Erdnase's publications, they're uncredited. So it might be possible that Erdnase saw Harry Houdini's publication and was like, I'm gonna yoink that. So that's another thing. But what if, and this is just an argument that people use, what if this move existed before both of them, and that's how they were published within like a year of both of them, right? So and that's how they were sorry, I can't English. And that's how they were published like within such a short like time gap. It's because the move existed like before them. I don't really I don't really have any thoughts on this. I mean, I think that, depending on the person, they might subscribe to one theory more than the other, but honestly, in terms of publication history, I would just give it to Harry Houdini. I mean, we know that from history-wise, Harry Houdini, didn't only do magic. He was mostly known for being an escape artist, but we know that he actually liked doing card magic as well, even if that's not his like staple. So I think it is pretty likely that Harry Houdini actually, came up with the move. I mean, even if someone came up with it beforehand, I also wouldn't be surprised because, card magic is, everyone just recreates the same things over and over, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing. But anyways, since those two publications, there had been a whole bunch of other handlings and variations. So one of them in particular is it comes from Ed Marlowe. He came up with the Marnay's change from The Last Hierophant, published back in 1980 by John Racker-Baumer. So that's actually an outjogged Erdnase change. So that's pretty interesting. The other so if in case you didn't know this, Marnay's is Marlowe and Erdnase combined together. The other change that I want to point out is the Hurricanes change by Harry Levine. So that is pretty much a refinement for the Erdnase change, and that came from the Trapdoor issue 42 by Steve Beam back in 1992. So that's pretty recent. The other something else that I want to point out is that I actually found this video through I was still studying in CGIP or college. But the trailer for it came out while I was in class. So that is ACP by Semjon Sidanov back in 2019. So you can definitely tell that this move has a lot of impact throughout Magic history because there's so many variations. I mean, I just pointed out 3 of them, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So there's so much more of it throughout like Magic literature, and you can still see it being used in social media and books. It's just everywhere nowadays. So yeah, this has been a pretty influential move. So since I found the original live stream explanation to be kind of jank, I've decided to refilm it from the ground up. Well, only this part, so only the basic mechanics part will be refilmed. But regardless, so first off, you're going to get a double turnover over the top 2 cards. So this can be done with just a pinky break and then a soft double. I taught that on my channel as well, or you can do your preferred method of a double turnover. It really doesn't matter, as long as you get 2 cards on top of the move. On top of the deck rather. So one thing to remember about this move is that everything about this move relies on friction and not any sort of pressure. So again, everything is very soft, and you just need to touch things for it to move, for it to work. So you don't have to actively press down. So again, very, very soft. So your right hand goes over the deck. You'll notice that it covers most of the deck. So I'll actually tell you a few reference points for where your hand should be at, and since our hands are all different, these are just base guidelines, right? You don't have to follow them to a T because everyone's hands are different, but these are just where my hand lands when it's over the deck. Alright, so you can see here that the fat of my thumb is just slightly, so the fat of my thumb as well as the end of my palm over here is just slightly below of the bottom edge of the deck. So over here, the top of my palm over here with the where the knuckles is just resting above of the center line of the deck. So the center of the deck is about here, right? And you just want to be resting slightly above over here, right? And then the end of the third phalange of your fingers, so this is the third phalange, so it's this bottom section, it's just resting slightly on top of the front edge of the deck. So again, these are just reference points. You don't have to actually follow them to a T, but these are where they actually rest. All right, and these are actually relevant to to how the change will actually work later on. All right. So now your right hand contacts the face of the deck, contacts the top card, just like so. Now you'll notice that it's actually the fat of my thumb, the knuckles of my palm over here, as well as some of the fingers are actually contacting the top of the card. So these 3 areas are contacting the card because they're bumpiest part of my hand, all right? So now I'm going to move my right hand forward, and through pure friction, this card is going to go along for the ride. And as this card goes along for the ride, my left index also follows this card forward, just like so. Alright, and the reason why my index actually follows this card forward, well, it's one, there's later on there's actually a mechanic that that you need to square up the deck, so that's why the index is following along. And also two, under the guise of your hand pushing this card forward, with your index still at the seemingly exact same spot, it makes it look like the deck is still right below it, even though the entire deck is actually shifted backwards. So if I have my index here, and I just push the top card forward, it makes it look like the deck never moved, or the top card never moved. But if I remove it, it's like this, right? Versus if I had this, and then the index actually suddenly disappeared, now it's a bit more jarring compared to having the index on top. So I want to keep my index sort of in full view at the entire time, just to make it seem like, you know, the nothing ever moved, alright? Just to seem like there's no moving parts. But with the top card now pushed forward, this means that now the fat and the end of your palm is now at the perfect spot to just rest and contact the exposed card over here. So once it's over here now, it can begin dragging the card backwards. So your right hand just moves backwards, and you'll notice that the card goes along with it. But at the exact same time, as you drag this card backwards, your index is going to kick this card, kick the up-jogged top card backwards as well. And the reason, and also, it actually kicks it backwards at the exact same pace as you are taking this card out. And the reason why it actually does it at the exact same pace is because, well, if it's too fast, you won't have any time to extract this card. But if it's too slow, now, by the time you're done extracting this card, you'll basically still have a bit of it protruding, and when your right hand is off of here, you'll see a bit of a flash as you square up this card. So you don't really want that. So you want to time this push in with the pull out at the exact same moment, because again, the pull out of this card also means it's the cover for the deck, right? So we're going to continue doing the pulling out this card until this front card is flush with the rest of the deck. So now by now, this card should be more than halfway out of the deck, but you need this card to be fully out. But you can't really go more backwards, because if you go backwards, this card will sort of just flop out. But there is another direction that this card can go towards, and that is to the right. So to give space for this card to actually free itself, your pinky is actually going to lower down just a bit, right? So it's going to bend down just a touch, so then this card can free itself. And then, so obviously this happens as your right hand moves to the right. And as this card moves to the right, now your pinky actually just contacts the back of this card with its nail. So now this card is being supported by your palm as well as the nail of your pinky. And the reason why it's being supported by the nail of this pinky is because, well, your nail has the least amount of friction. If it was with the pad of your finger, notice that it's a lot harder to actually move this card around, versus if it's the nail, you can just seamlessly glide on top of the card, which is quite nice. So again, you want it to be the nail of your fingers, all right? So the card is still trapped, so you're going to continue moving your right hand off to the right, and you're going to extend your pinky underneath of it, all right? So here your pinky extends underneath of it until this card frees itself from the deck, all right? So now it's truly being supported by the nail of your pinky and the rest of your palm, all right? So now you're in perfect position to do the change. So all of this right now was called the extraction of the card. It's just called the steal of the card, right? Now we can move on to the change or the replacement. So how I usually like to do the change, so I'll just forgo this card for just a second. So how I like to usually do the change is actually in a diagonal shape. So how I like is to actually write the fingers upwards and then to the left and then downwards, like so, in a diagonal shape. So that's what I mean by it's in a diagonal pattern, because this gives a sort of a diagonal shape to the change, I guess, to the hand motion rather. So we're going to follow that exact path. So we have the card pinned by the nail and the palm, and now this card is actually going to ride on top of the nails of the other left fingers. So we have our pinky finger, ring finger, and then middle finger, and this card is going to ride on top of the nails of these fingers over here, right? Just like so. So it's going to ride on top, and following the triangular pattern, I'm going to move this card to the left. And at some point, because I'm going to move this card to the left, it's going to fall off from the left fingers, and it's going to land on top of the deck. And all of this happens underneath of the cover of the right hand, right? Now, if the card doesn't fall completely square with the rest of the deck, like so, it's completely okay, because, well, these left fingers, well, they sort of act like a net for this card. So if you just, give them a tiny squeeze, you can now square this card on top of the deck, right? So now it's completely square with the rest of the deck, just like so. So now that you've completed the replacement, all that you need to do is to reveal the card. How I like to reveal the card is just to actually turn my hand diagonally, like so, with my fingers pointing to the left, to the upper left corner, and then I just swipe this card to the bottom right corner. So then it seems like a sort of gradient, right? Because it seems like this card just changes like so. I've seen people who do the change and it does it off to the side. I don't think it's that good of an effect, right? Some people do it from the front or from the back, right? It really doesn't sort of matter. But personally, I like doing it from a diagonal, because the diagonal, I don't know, there's just some sort of flair to it, almost as if your palm never fully covers the deck, but the card still changes. All right, so it's sort of like, even though these fingers are exposing the face of the deck, it changes underneath of it, which I find quite nice. But again, this is just a stylistic choice. How you complete the wave is entirely up to you. And with that, you've completed the change. Yeah, I mean, that's that. And now to clean up, you can either do another double turnover, so another pinky count, soft double, and then just turn the card over, or you can do a KM move, which I'm not going to teach on this video, but you end up with a nice single card. So you can do a KM move as well. But that's it for the basic mechanics of the Erdnase change. Hope you enjoy. So now we can move on to a couple of tips regarding the Erdnase change. So if you actually hear a click, so I'll put the deck closer to the mic. So if you actually hear a click when the card clears the top card, so this actually happens mostly during here. So when you hear this click, that's because you changed the plane of the deck and the card, causing the card to actually snap off of this card. All right, so how you actually fix this is relatively simple. So make sure that until this card clears the deck, make sure that the card and the deck stays on the same plane. So make sure that these two cards are flat against one another and not bent like so. Because when you bend your right hand, this also bends this right card, which causes this to just snap. All right, so make sure that you're aware of that as well. All right. There's another subtlety where you actually, when you're done extracting the card, you actually tilt your right hand downwards, so then this card is actually resting on the bottom short edge of the deck like so. And what this does, it makes it so that, you know, it looks like your right hand is hovering above of the deck. But in real, because I mean, it's sort of like a tilt or a depth illusion, where if you cock your wrist downwards a bit, or it looks like there's more space in between of the two hands, right? So in reality, it's making like some weird L shape over here. All right. So this is what it actually looks like. Yeah, this is actually a better angle. So this is what it actually looks like, and then you could execute the change as per usual. So this is a subtlety that Robbie Moreland added to his cloud change, which you should check out. So yeah, those are just 2 tips for the Erdnase color change. 1 subtlety and 1 tip, 1 actual tip. All right, now we can go into the main part of the video. The part where people actually don't tell you about, the part where people actually shy away from, and that is telling you how this move is flawed. Because most people just teach you the mechanics and that's it. But I want you guys to actually think about a move. And this is how I'm going to make you think about it. I'm going to point out its flaws. Here are the 3 main flaws that I found with the Erdnase color change. You have to wave your hand over the deck twice, right? You have to wave your hand once, extract a card from the center of the deck, and then another to actually just replace the card to change it, right? I mean, calling it a change is a bit of an overstatement, because this is not a wave. This weird thing is definitely not a wave. The change itself is a wave, but the extraction itself is definitely not a wave. But I mean, well, regardless of that, when you think about methods, you should always think about, well, how would this look if I had actual magical abilities, right? I mean, I wouldn't do this one weird push and then this one weird pullback and then a nice wave, right? Realistically, it would just be a nice wave, right? So obviously we don't have actual magical powers, so we have to compromise, but just sort of give it some thought. How would you actually streamline the extraction? All right, so just think about that. The second flaw that I found with the Erdnase change is that there is actually a visible push forward of this card. No matter how much you try to lessen this push forward, there will always be a visible push forward, right? So even if you add the index subtlety, there will still be this weird push forward. So that's another flaw. So how would you eliminate that? And then the third flaw of that is that, well, this is just for certain people, but some people like to put the card deep into their palm, so it looks like this. And that way they can actually show their fingers as being empty. So now they have their hand actually sprawled open, and they can display this card, this change as being done open-handedly. There's a big problem with that, and that is, well, why does your hand go so forward to execute the change, right? Because realistically, if you actually had magical powers, you would be able to execute the change with your fingers, right? Without having your hand so forward, you would be able to execute the change with just these fingers, right? It would just change like so. But instead, you have to move your entire hand forward, which I think actually looked even more odd, because now you have your sprawled hand, and now you have to move your entire hand forward for the change to be executed. All right? So that is another flaw of the move, but obviously it's not a built-in flaw. That's just a personal flaw for people who actually do the move this way. All right? So here's just a brief side note. if you really think about it, the Erdnase change is just a really bad version of the side still color change. If you don't know what the side still color change is, I don't know if I can actually do it. You have to forgive me for doing some. Oh, that's bad. It's so bad. But yeah, I don't really do it. But basically, it's the same core mechanics as the Erdnase color change. If you really think about it, you steal a card from the center of the deck. Well, one is from the second from top, but same general gist. And then you add the card to the top of the deck to seemingly change it. The main difference is that the card actually never goes from full palm. The main difference is that the card never goes into full palm for the Erdnase change, right? It always just sort of hovers there in your right palm, right? Whereas with the side still color change, which I guess you can do from a second from top position. Oh boy. Whereas from the side still color change, it actually goes into a full classic palm, right? So the Erdnase change is basically the side still color change, but the Erdnase change just has a really bad way to steal a card, right? Because it just steals it from the back, which is not something that most people do. Whereas the side still color change, you actually steal it from the side, which I think actually has a lot more justification, because you can just place the deck off to the side and then you're palming the card, right? So the Erdnase change just is flawed in mechanics, because already you're stealing the card from the back, which is something that most people wouldn't do. And also, the steal and the replacement needs to be done consecutively, right? It has to be done in a row. You have to steal the card, and then you have to replace the card for it to be called the Erdnase color change. Whereas the side steal color change, you can break the steal, right, and the replacement into two distinct parts, right? So you can display this or whatever, and then you could do the change, right? So you can separate the replacement and you can separate the steal and the replacement into two distinct moments, making the discrepancies less obvious for the side steal color change. And so the Erdnase color change by nature is heavily flawed. So just think about that. So if you really want to use it, you have to take these things into consideration. So now I'll be doing something that I rarely do on this channel, and that is I'll walk you through how I try to improve the move over the years. I'll only be showing you the first 3 stages of development of the move, and that is so that you can understand how I thought about this move for the first couple of times, first couple of stages of development. And 2, you can understand that, well, things take time. You can't just learn a move and then toss it aside. You have to understand that things go through several changes, and that, it goes through like a very non-linear path of progression before even being presentable. So yeah. And also note that all the ones that I'm about to do share the same core mechanics of the Erdnase change, right? Part of the reason why I'm also not sharing like the other stages of stages of development of the Erdnase change is because, well, some of those stages don't use Erdnase stuff. They use stuff inspired by other people, which I don't think I can actually share here. So the following stuff are going to share the same core mechanics as the Erdnase change. So yeah, but without further ado, let's take a trip down memory lane and see how I gradually try to improve the Erdnase change. All right. So the first development is, well, everything starts off and works the exact same as the standard Erdnase change. But yeah, so all of the following mechanics are to sort of combat how would you eliminate this push forward, right? Because as of right now, that's not really the most visible flaw, but that's the most tangible flaw, right? Where you can always see this card being pushed forward. So how would you eliminate that? Well, from back then, I thought up of one method, and that is If you can't push something forward, then you should push it backwards. So contact the top card, again, as per usual, with your right hand. And again, it's just pure friction, no pressure. And now your right hand pulls this card slightly backwards until just this brief lip forms. And now, this is where it's relevant, your index finger sort of wraps around this lip without the top card, like so. And now it can just kick everything backwards. All right. And again, the top card doesn't move because it's being held there with pure friction. And by kicking everything backwards, so this is how you're left in now, you are putting yourself in the exact same position as the standard Erdnase change, except that you're, rather than bringing your right hand to this bottom card, to the second from top card, you are bringing this second from top card to the palm of your hand. And then you can execute the Erdnase change as per usual via just squaring up the top card and then doing the Erdnase change. All right. So that's the first development. You just kick everything below of this card backwards. So that was how that was how I first tried to tackle the push forward. All right. The second development is, works on the same principle as this first development, except that kicking the entire deck backwards is really unoptimized if you really think about it, because you only need this card over here. So why would you kick the entire deck backwards? So that's where the second part of the development comes into play, is what if you only kicked part of the deck backwards? So it's going to be the same mechanics as the first one, where you slightly pull this card backwards to expose this this lip. But instead of applying even pressure with your index to kick the entire deck backwards, you're going to just curl in the first phalange of your index. So just this little bit over here. And by doing so, you're going to bevel the deck. All right, so now you have a nice bevel. The front edge of the deck at the bottom is still relatively in line with this top card over here. All right, it's just everything that's below of the top card is beveled or kicked backwards, right? Also, I just realized I didn't get a double. There we go. So if I pull this card backwards and I just curl in my first phalange, everything just kicks backwards like so. And now you have a bevel like so. But now you're in the exact same position as the first development, where you're exposing this second card without needing to push everything forward. So now you can just execute the Erdnase change as per usual and square up the front edge of the deck with your index finger. And then, yeah, that's the exact same thing, except that you don't have to kick the entire deck backwards. So again, that's another development I did for the Erdnase change. But you can sort of see where this is going, I hope, is that, well, why would I kick the entire deck backwards if I only need this card over here? So if pushing the deck forward isn't the answer and pushing backwards isn't the answer, then maybe pulling backwards is. And that's where this third development comes into play. So you're going to execute the double turnover as per usual. And as your right palm actually covers the top of the deck, like so, underneath of that cover, you're going to get a pinky break beneath of this top card. So you're going to get a pinky break above of the hidden card. And now you're going to get a deep pinky break. So you're going to stick in your entire pinky, so then the pad of it actually wraps around the deck and contacts the card below of the pinky break, like so. And what this gives you the opportunity to do is that now, if you just pull your pinky backwards, you get an in jog. This nice in jog over here means that now, oops, I pulled another card backwards too. What this nice in jog means now is that you're in the prime position to execute the Erdnase color change. And you didn't even need to contact the rest of the deck. Well, you didn't need to move the rest of the deck. All you did was you moved one card backwards. All right, so that is another development for the Erdnase change. Rather than moving the entire deck, just move one single card. Is that the answer? Well, who really knows? So that was it. Those were the 3 developments for the Erdnase change. Well, those were the first 3 developments that my Erdnase change has gone through. I am still actively developing it, but for now, I'll leave you these 3 breadcrumbs as to where the Erdnase change has gone through. All right, it's not because I don't want to expose all my knowledge. I mean, if I ever meet you in real life, I would gladly share my knowledge and whatnot, but it's because there's really no point in you arriving at the same conclusion as I have, right? Because, well, all our brains are different. We go through different experiences, you learn through different things, and if I just feed you everything, you wouldn't go through the same journey as I have of, well, thinking, how would I refine this move? How would I try to improve this move, right? So I want you guys to arrive at your own conclusions. Again, your way of thinking is different from mine, and I can't always spoon feed you information. So I'll leave you with this final development of in-jogging the card below of the selection, so then nothing about this changes, and they could just execute the Erdnase change as per usual. So think about your style, think about your current knowledge, and think about how you, and not how I, well, Curtis, would actually do this move. And I think you'll be actually actively surprised by how far you can take this move. So again, feel free to always fiddle around with your moves, and don't just learn things and just perform them as you learn, because there's a lot that you can take away from just actively thinking about moves. All right, so moving on to the application section of the Erdnase change. So there are 4 applications. One is obviously the color change. I mean, that's what I've been teaching you guys for the past, 50 minutes. You can also do the move as a production. So if you have the card second from top actually reversed, and you just do the Erdnase change, you can just have a card produced, right? And if you just have a card on top face up with just a single card, and you just do a Erdnase change, this can act as a vanish. All right, there are some people who like to do the move with the card up jogged, like so, and then it just vanishes, right? So people would attribute that to Daniel Madison and his half vanish, where he does this thing, right, and he just does this wipe thing, which I guess that would be this middle finger solstice would be from Daniel Madison, but I guess in total it would actually be from Marlowe. Marlowe actually had a section called the Marnay's change as a vanish. So yeah, I think that generally this is from Marlowe. So again, this is just a top card, face up card with a reversed, with a face down second from top card, and yeah, it can just act as a vanish if you want. And here, here's an application that I don't know why anyone would do this, but if you do the move with the cards face down, it can be done as a switch. So if I have the Queen of Diamonds on top of the deck, and I just did the Erdnase change, I switched it for the Six of Hearts. Which again, I don't know why anyone would do this, but maybe you have a card up jog. So if you have the Six of Hearts over here, and you just switched it, right? Maybe that could work. But again, there's just a brief idea, trying to fill in the quota for whatever. But yeah, that's that for the applications. Just some fun ideas for you to play around with. And now we've reached the end of our journey. We've reached the further reading part. So if you want to learn more about the Erdnase change, there's so many resources out there. I'll just pinpoint some of the changes that are Erdnase-esque as well. All right. So there's obviously the Expert at the Card Table by S.W. Erdnase, Hierophant by John Rackerbaumer. It's sold as a PDF or ebook. There's Kabbalah Volume 2 by John Rackerbaumer. That's an ebook as well. There's Confident Deceptions by Jason Ladany. A Walk in the Clouds by Robbie Moreland, which I referenced back in the tips section. There's the Zoso Change by Doc Doherty. There's the Talk About Tricks, there we go, by Joshua J. And there's the Yoann Fontaine Patreon, which there he teaches the Hurricane Change by Harry Levine, because the Trapdoor magazine by Steve Beam is no longer in print, so you can go ahead and check those out. What a journey this has been. I mean, I'm still actively working on this move, like I said, and I think at this point the change that I think where the change is at this point is so far removed from the Erdnase change that I can't even call it the Erdnase change anymore. So yeah, but anyways, it's fun to work on a move. I mean, it's fun to find flaws in the move and changing to something that suits your palette. And again, we don't have actual magical powers because, well, we're human. So, you know, we have to find ways to compromise, and all of our compromises are different from one another. All right. So yeah, it's just, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, because all our brains are different. So maybe you'll find flaws with developments that I presented in the video, or you'll find other flaws with the move that I didn't have with the Erdnase change, right? So we might have all the same starting point, but you know, our destinations and our journeys are all going to be completely different. So I can't wait for you guys to actually, you know, maybe tinker with the move, right? You don't actually have to place, like, I don't know, like 10 years of work into the Erdnase change. I didn't place that much time into it, but you know, I'm really excited to see what you guys have are going to bring with this change. So yeah,